For today's part of my Best of 2024 awards, we are going to Best Action Games, for this being a very wide variety for the genre this year, with a lot of driving, running, shooting, spaceshipping, and more. This year has been a very diverse offering of action titles. We have roguelike action, shooter action, shmup action, and a lot more. So for this particular category, I'm going to be including kind of traditional and action-based games, as well as shmups. Again, for shooters and shooter-likes, they'll be in their own respective fields. And we're going to be starting things off with Go Mecha Ball. This one came out relatively early in the year, and it's a very satisfying kind of arcade isometric shooter. It felt really, really good to play this one in terms of the feel of moving around, knocking into enemies, getting those shots off, and more. It did feel a little bit limited in terms of progression, that we played through, I think, like 3 or 4 times, and we really weren't seeing anything like changing or growing in that respect, but I don't quite feel that was the point of Go Mecha Ball. It was kind of more in line with the more like arcade feel of trying to do better on your next run. A really solid example of how much, again, especially for this particular category, that good game feel will matter in terms of keeping someone invested in playing. And if you are interested in this kind of isometric shooting, or again, just getting that feel of moving, shooting, and bouncing around right, then definitely give this one a play. For our next category, this is for people who love their action games to be very stylish, and don't mind attacks being in the form of squiggly lines, with Death of a Wish. This is from the same developer, I believe it's called Lucah, Born of a Dream. And this one is very much like a high-speed, kind of in a somewhat sense of like a Hyper Light Drifter, that style. But the game definitely goes all on its own in terms of its unique setting, the kind of use of healing and multiple endings. And if you're playing this on the higher difficulties, it is no slouch in terms of challenge. Combat and defense is built on being able to parry and kind of counter enemy attacks. You have different abilities or weapons you can pick up. Lots and lots of lines and effects on screen. My main issue with this one was it kind of got very hard to parse what was going on. And in a game where parrying in terms of specific timing is very important, not being able to tell is if this squiggly thing is going to kill you or it's this one over here becomes very difficult. But still, very unique and original action game all the way through, and I would definitely recommend you check this one out. And if you're looking for more from this developer, then Born of a Dream is also a very solid one as well. We have our first shmup / action game for the list with Astrolancer. This is a modern retro take on kind of the like top-down shooting of, say, of a Blaster Master style, but with also some bullet hell shmupping for good measure. The game kind of goes between the two different level types, with you being on foot for the first half of the level, and then taking on the boss in a shmup stage. This one does a lot of really great things. I would advise not playing on the highest difficulty, as it does get very painful in that respect, but a really solid show, and again, continue proof that you can do a lot with modern retro design and push it in interesting and new directions. So this one, again, I would say is more for the modern retro fan, and an easy recommendation from me. We're getting cozy for our next pick with Dungeons of Hinterberg. This one is kind of more on the Zelda-like style of an action-adventure, but does a really great job of its theme and its aesthetics, as it takes place in a world, well, our world, where dungeons and magic have apparently appeared in the Alps. So, it becomes the next happening tourist trap, where people go to, well, live out their dungeon crawling best lives. I love the kind of like merging of the magic with the contemporary of our world, and this one, I would say, is a very solid take. Everything is kind of by the books in terms of the action-adventure design, going around, interacting with the various people, getting relationships which give you bonuses, etc., etc. But this one is really more along the lines of being greater than the sum of its parts. And I do like kind of fitting this all within a modern or, again, contemporary setting rather than traditional fantasy. So if you've ever wanted to, I guess, eat, pray, love, but doing the dungeon crawling version of it, then I would give this one a play. Our next game is definitely more defined by its story and aesthetics rather than being pure action, but it still belongs in this category, and that is Judero, the stop-motion Saturday morning fever dream of Scottish mythology. This is a game that one look at it will determine whether or not you're all in or all out on it. And what you'll get is just a confusing feast for the eyes as you explore this strange land, learn about its unusual denizens, and get into some very weird combat and puzzle solving along the way. Not the longest game by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely one of the more original ones released this year. So, if you've always wanted to get the drug version of a Saturday morning cartoon, then give this one a try. In terms of really stretching the definition of action, we have our next title, and that is What the Car? The ultra serious and completely realistic take on driving, much like the developer's previous game, What the Golf. It's definitely not into driving, as we'll be running, jumping, sliding, hockey pucking, giraffe walking, flying, and more in this title. Like the last game, it is just a collection of all the many different ways that you can take this theme and, again, run/drive/whatever with it. You'll find a variety of challenges, all with that kind of same, wacky, irrelevant tone to them. So this one I would definitely recommend, and if you haven't played What the Golf yet, and if you're like me and you're not a fan of it, then you should definitely give it a try and see all the many ways you can ignore golf, just as you can ignore getting behind the wheel in this one. Now, we're back to 2D for a very, very, very challenging game, and that is Volgarr the Viking 2, the sequel to the original brutal masochistic action platformer. This one, it has been reined in slightly in terms of its overwhelming difficulty, but you'll still find one of the hardest takes on action platformers released this year, especially if you're trying to go for the game's true ending where you must really get good and learn the level design. This is a game that the only reason why it works is because the controls and the general gameplay have been handled so well. In a lesser game, this will just be too damn frustrating or annoying to get through. But because of how tight the controls are, it does help soften the blow to know that it was your fault as to why Volgarr fell into a pit, or ran out of air, or insert death here. And the game has been tuned to be a little bit more accommodating since it was released, to give us lesser mortals a chance to reach Valhalla. So, if you are interested in an extreme challenge, then this is a really solid recommendation, provided you don't also come with high blood pressure as well. For our last game in this category, we're back to shmup, but with a very different and disturbing take on it, with Angel at Dusk. This is a body horror, very fleshy, flesh take on the shmup genre, with a story that kind of slowly unravels itself as you play through it, along with multiple modes of difficulty and design, including a full-on RPG style one where you'll acquire new weapons, use the various parts you pick up to upgrade them, and see how far that you can go with it, unlocking more of the game's surreal story along the way. Now, while there is a lot of story and modes to this one, it is still a very challenging take. The earlier difficulties should be more than enough for anyone who's played a shmup-style game before, but if you're going really high, expect to be swarmed by bullets from every which way, manner, and pattern that you can imagine. Definitely a recommendation for the shmup fans in the audience, and I'm curious to see what kind of shmupping we'll get in 2025. And with that, another category is done. Let me know what some of your favorite action or action-adjacent games were for 2024. There's still plenty more categories to get to. We haven't done Souls-like yet, that's for sure. And be sure to tune in for our next video coming real soon. So again, thanks for watching, and see everyone next time. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, Be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and if you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.